We are ready. Good. I appreciate very much you coming here for the program. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, we meet quite often in church, but normally in church you don't have time to open up about our origins, about lives, our experiences and things like that. So I think that will be, for me personally, a very interesting opportunity, and for sure for our viewers. You come from a beautiful place. I never been there. A country called Haiti. What are you, both of you, yeah?
Yes, I was born and raised in Haiti, and my husband Villard was born in New York from Haitian
families,
yes.
yeah. So let's begin with you. Share with us some of your early memories about your family of origin, schools, things like that.
Well, I was born in a Seventh Adventist home. My father was an Adventist minister,
I see.
and so I grew up in Haiti in a Seventh Adventist environment mainly. I have two brothers and an older sister, and so the home was full with people all the time.
Yeah,
and
visitors.
Exactly,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
exactly, visiting all the time, or in transit. Any Seventh Adventist people who wanted to go to the next city, and it was too late to travel, they stopped by and stayed at the pastor's home to stay. Hospitality was the main thing. So your room was never yours. People would come and
Did
stay
you
all the
resent
time.
being asked to move to another room?
Absolutely, a lot of time, and you're trained to do it, so it was easy.
It was easy,
No,
because the
it's
question
easy and
was,
it's
did you
exciting.
resent it?
No, not at all.
You said, absolutely.
You've always been doing it, so it's exciting. Oh, there are people, and
new people,
you're excited
listening
to
their
meet
stories.
them. Exactly, and we hear so much, and so
having
that's why I grew up.
Having better food, because the
Exactly.
visitors.
Yes, extra food, special food, because visitors are there. Or when the pastors are traveling, they stay at each other's home.
Yes.
And
yes.
That it's always a feast. So it was always a pleasure
very
to
warm,
have visitors.
Very social.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Is generally speaking, what is the religious landscape of
In
Haiti?
So you would find most of the population is Catholic.
Yes.
And so that would be between, it used to be half of the population was Catholic. Now Protestantism is having a little bit more, and you'll find Baptist and Seventh-day Adventist, Jehovah's Witness, Church of God, and so it would share the landscape like that. And
but the Adventist
of course,
Church is quite strong.
Voodooism. I'm sorry?
Adventist Church is quite strong.
Absolutely, very, in every city there is a main Seventh-day Adventist church, every main city, and all the small cities, almost all of them have a small Seventh-day Adventist church as well. So my pastor, being a pastor of the district where he was, had about 11 churches under him. So from the main church in that main city where he was, he had to visit also other smaller churches.
Would you join him?
A lot of times.
A lot of times.
So my brothers were more adventurous and wanted to go on every trip. So my question when there was a trip to him was always, is a car able to get there? So if there was a lot of walking after the car stopped, then I'd be like, I'm not sure if I want to go. But a lot of times it was not a choice. I had to go. And it always turned out to be a great adventure. Really.
Yeah. And personally, as you were growing up, were you as fond as Adventism and Christianity as you used to be as a child, or it was a time when you were struggling with it?
I grew up in the church, never really stopped or never had to go out of the church to come back in. I didn't have that moment.
Very good.
I did not always have a moment where I was absolutely involved in church with involved in ministries. So maybe throughout my years you'll find a few 3 or 4 more years where I didn't take any active part in activities in church. But maybe we can find 3 years like that and not really consecutives. So Probably at the time when I transitioned from one country to another or one city to another, there might have been time when you're new, and it takes time to acclimate, but once you hit the ground, then keep going. So I was always involved in church.
So should we understand that you moved a lot, as pastors do?
That's right. So in Haiti, the pastors move every 3 years, most 4. So every 3 to 4 years, we were packing up and going to a new
Did you enjoy
city.
it or resent it?
It
Both.
was bittersweet. So I learned eventually that once I get to the new city, I'll make new friends, and so you won't be new for too long. But it was always hard to leave friends and people you've made ties with, and we always do. We always set a ground, and we always mingle and make friends, but so that makes that when it was time to go, it was harder, but we always did that again in the next city. So I have a lot of friends in my country.
Lydie, I think it will be very easy to fill the whole program with just you. What are we going to do? Shall we ignore him and invite him?
Yeah, I like say also.
I like listening to her, so that's fine.
You may learn some new things about your wife.
I always say that at church, that she's more interesting than people think. Believe me, you know. She even hides the fact that she used to be Pathfinder director at one point. You know?
All the ministries.
Many badges on your coat.
Yeah, master guide and Pathfinder director and youth assistant director.
Was any of the honors especially attractive to you?
Yes, because I started since I was a little. I remember I finished with the adventurers when I was probably 8. I finished all the classes, so they had no choice but to put me in Pathfinder. But then in Pathfinder, to be an explorer, you needed to be at a certain degree in school because what they wanted you to study, in fact, to be a pioneer. So you needed to be a certain degree in school. So when I got to explore, they allowed me to attend that class, and then they told me, you're gonna have to wait, because I was only 11. And I needed to wait until I'm about 14 and 15. So that was a time when I was going to Pathfinder, but not really attending any class because I was too advanced for the kids my age, and I needed to hold down a little bit.
In what ways do you think those pathfindering activities shaped your life?
Oh, they teach you how to have fun in a healthy way.
Fun in the healthy way.
Yes,
interesting.
a good way. So really, for certain kids, they may find that church is boring and there's too many restrictions. And once you join these clubs, you find that there's not that many restrictions as you thought. You could be in nature, you could be with your own Christian friends and have as much fun as when you are with other friends. So the world doesn't have this glimmer that it has to people who are not having fun in church. So it allows you to learn all type of exciting things and have fun while you're in church as a young person. And that's what makes it attractive for a young person.
Are you also a nature person?
I am. We used to have a lot of camps and outside activities, and I think I've kind of passed, both of us are nature people, and we kind of passed the gene to our daughter who loves outdoor.
She's here.
She is here with us behind the scenes, yes, watching us.
So I'll ask her about that after the program.
Absolutely.
Yes, Villard, are you also a nature person, or your nature is the streets and the buildings of New York?
You know, the city is something that I'm used to. I was born there, and when I was born, we were born in an apartment building. So you're used to that city in the tight spaces. And I still remember that alternate side of parking is something that people in Georgia are not used to. But in the city, you actually have to change the side that the car is parked because they have to come and clean the streets. And since you don't drive, all you do mostly is move the car back and forth. But that's another story. But I love nature, love nature. I love the outdoors. Whenever I come back from work, if I could take the tie off and go to the park and walk, it's something that I enjoy. I love
Wonderful.
water, anything with leaves. That's my notion.
For how long have your parents been in New York when you were born?
Okay, so my parents came in the mid 60s, maybe like 60s, right? And so they were in New York probably about 6 years.
So
about 6
still
years,
the difficult times, I suppose?
in Haiti.
No.
From
For them as new immigrants.
Oh yes. It was, and they did not have the benefit of having people to actually depend on. So they were kind of the pioneers.
Really?
Many of them came together, and immigration back then was a little different. Where people came in, it was a lot easier to immigrate as long as you had some type of
Legally
education.
speaking,
Exactly.
legally
That's
speaking,
exactly
but life was tough.
very, very, very tough. It was tough. If you could probably imagine, for many immigrants, they were educated back home and they had a certain status and they had a certain way of life.
And now they had to start
Exactly.
from scratches.
From very the same. I remember, I tell you, at a young age, my dad would come back probably about 11, 12 o'clock at night. I had two jobs.
And go back
and go back.
at 6 morning.
As a matter of fact, which is a good thing for Adventists, because the one time I saw my dad was on Fridays, really, because he didn't work Friday nights.
Not Friday nights. Yeah.
Right. So on Friday afternoon, he would be home 12, 1, by the time he'd come back, and then he didn't go back till Sunday night, whatever it was.
What kind of work was he doing?
My dad, he was like a phlebotomist when he came, so he worked as a helper in the hospital, mostly. Yeah, much different than what he did when he was back home, which is he was a notary back home, which is different than a notary here.
I mean, it's higher. I mean, it's more complex.
Yes.
Yeah, much more
Much more complex, like in Europe.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, over here you probably just get a stamp. There he was responsible for all the people with their land. He had to legalize it. He had to do all the other things. You're like the trusted person for the entire agricultural. But come here, it's about surviving. Even I think the degree that he had, I don't even think he worked fully on it. It was mostly making and surviving. It wasn't just about the immediate family. You've got the family.
Everyone was now
Everyone else.
looking at you. You're the messiah, for the rescuer for everyone.
That's right.
Yeah, went quietly. So yeah, but it's very, the church helps a lot because it brings, at least for my dad, it brought a community. It brought this sense of worth, a little bit more than just work. And the camaraderie is just something that you just cannot, the togetherness and that you just can't replace.
Was the Haitian church they were attending, or it was too early to have Haitian churches?
Yes, yeah, they had a Haitian church. Still remember that church, the small church. That church was a smaller church, and it grew. Now it's a huge church. It's the Hebron Church. It's probably one of the main churches in New York. But I grew up in Haitian churches all through my life, which helped because it even if you're born here, but it allows you to connect with the culture, appreciate the culture, and understand who you are.
Were they in church? Were they speaking French or Creole or both, or English or
both?
Both.
The Haitian church has gone through a transition. When I was growing up, it was mostly French that they spoke. And for me, all I wanted to do is speak English because you want to be like everybody else, all the kids. But it goes into you. But then it has transitioned to Creole, which is more of a dialect type of language now. But when I was growing up, most of the churches was French. Yeah. It's still the read and the written language, but it's spoken-wise and service-wise, it's more Creole to include everyone.
I see. So you felt, that the family was struggling financially, or that was not not something for you to realize.
Yeah. Well, yeah, back then kids didn't meddle into the finances of the parents. But I tell you, the eye-opener was that what I felt when I became in my early teens is that financially, even though maybe they made less in Haiti, I don't know, but they felt at a higher status and they got more for their money. To the point where I think at some point, I think the American dream that they thought about was not really what they expected. Does that make sense, Ben?
Sure.
Yeah. My parents were people that they live by their means and they just whatever they have. I think my dad had maybe 1 or 2 credit cards maybe that he never used, and my mother said, "Hey, you need to use this thing if you want your credit." So they never had struggles because they just lived. But I think they hoped that they had more to do more, but they were limited as to what they could have done. I mean, for one point in my life, I was even sent to Haiti to get connected with the culture, and that helped them. I think it helped them to put their resources together, have family take care of me, and have me come back.
Were you good in school?
Yes, school was never something that.
As much as boys can be.
Yeah, exactly. It was never something that I thought about grades as much. I think I just did things, and I always tell, at least I tell my daughter, I said, if I really thought about how much easier maybe, I think I'll be top of the class all the time. But yeah, I never really struggled in school. I don't know, for some reason, you just learn what to do. And the other thing that's different is, it's interesting. My parents did not have to ask me, what homeworks do you have? What do you have to do?
No, you were on your own.
Yeah, they didn't have the time. You just had to do. But they did expect certain grades. I mean, it was that. And if the grades were not obtained, you were going to...
In trouble.
Exactly. I still remember one time, high school, the teacher said, I think we need to get your mother in. I said, my mother in? No, this is not going to happen. Yeah, so...
Very scary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so so I did what I had to do, and it came to me. It was never something that I really struggled with.
It was a time when you became more interested, more determined about education.
Oh, yeah. I think, it's interesting. I was here. I don't really remember my time here as much in school, except that I did it, well, as a child.
Yes.
I went to Haiti. I think I struggled a little bit in Haiti because you had to have the language. But then I excelled because I excelled so much that when I came back, my math skills level had risen through the roof.
For how long have you been in Haiti?
Probably like maybe 3-4 years or something like that. But it was it was
for the school years. So he was going for the school year and come back for summer.
Yeah, and I came back for summer. So at one point in my childhood, they sent me.
It was not difficult for you to adjust to the life.
It was. I think it was, but I don't think you're given an option much in Haiti. I mean, it was okay. You're going to get this. And I remember people staying up with you and doing what you need to do or recite, which was much different than here. I mean, you would have to recite things by memory.
Yeah, to use the memory.
And the math, you had to get the math. And when I came back here, I actually got skipped the class because I remember although the language, I had lost some of the language skills, but in math and science, I was so advanced that they asked me to do something, and I just did it. And she just said, next thing you know, I was getting tested, I was upper class, So I became a better student, but I think I became a much better student in college. I think college, for me, it was my place. I just felt, okay, you know what, you have a goal, so you have second year, and then I just started focused till I finished.
Lydie, do you allow me to ask him one more question before he turns into you?
Yes, absolutely. He's interesting.
I have to develop my negotiating skills.
You're doing great. You're good.
What about your faith journey? Obviously, you have good memories from early childhood church attendance. How was for you when you were a teenager? Lots of temptations, lots of...
It's interesting. We could spend an entire session on that.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because I was born Adventist, presented in the Adventist church,
Yes.
the temple here, very important. Interestingly, my parents married Catholic in Haiti.
Oh,
And my dad converted
interesting.
in Haiti.
Interesting.
When they came here, my mother was still not Adventist. However, by that time, I don't think she was really into the Adventist, into the Catholic Church, I should say. So my dad would faithfully go to church, and my mother would push him to bring me to church, even when she doesn't go.
Very interesting.
Very, very, yes. And,
Do you remember that, or it was told to you?
No, I remember that very
You
well.
remember?
I remember it more late in my later years, maybe 13, 14, where I would hesitate or try to use my mom because there's something that I want to do. I want to stay, right? and try to put my parents one against the other religious-wise because, you know. But my mother would not leave that as an option.
Oh.
And at some point early on, she would go to church with us, and until the end of her life, you could tell she was Adventist, and she was buried in the Adventist church. But the thing is, not in the church, but you understand the service was there.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I remember early on, Adventist. When I went to Haiti, where I was, the people were Catholic. I remember the Seminary Adventist Church.
Yes.
And I remember the vibrancy of it. But during that time that I was in Haiti, I didn't go to the Adventist Church. You know. Came back here, came right back. And then by that time, you know, you start becoming 11, 12. And I tell you, I was lost a bit as a teen, because church was more of a routine. But we had a lot going on back then, which helped. We had choir, we had activity. And back then, if you're 10 or 11, they give you roles to do. I mean, you're expected, you're an adult. It comes like that. That helped a lot. So although faith-wise, you're not there, at least I wasn't, but it kept you in the church. And then later on, as I went through high school, I went through, and I remember getting baptized about 16, and I tell you, it was just a ritual, I think. I think it was time that I get baptized. But then I did a lot of study abroad programs, and I remember being in Europe, and even then, I looked for the Adventist church, but I didn't always make it a point, but I always identified as Adventist, and I wouldn't, there's certain things, you know, you're Adventist. But then I think my faith really was anchored towards my mid-late 20s. I think back then, I really understood and made a connection.
What do you
with the
think
Lord.
it was the trigger for that?
I
Or
think,
it's difficult to pinpoint anything special?
No, I don't know the exact trigger, but I do remember that I started understanding that life has struggles, and the answer to life struggles is with God and not with others. And I don't know it's because we had a lot of crusades then, connection, but there's something that I understood the magnitude, the greatness of God, what you're able to do with God, and just struggles, and sometimes even asking myself certain things. Why are you doing this? And I started understanding, you know, there are two forces in the world, and you need, and most importantly, that He has done so much. And I started connecting with God a lot more.
Wonderful. Yeah.
You know, I'd like to build on what he just said
Yes,
about,
please.
he said something that caught my attention. We don't always have a aha moment where some people get that, some people don't, but at a certain time you just realize your relationship with God is getting more personal. And I think he said something that is a trigger for us is to attend those crusades. So when you go to this crusade and other people are making decisions, you also go through your life and you're making decisions with them without going forward, without getting rebaptized, but you are going through this reconsecration of your life to God, and you're doing that year after year, and your relationship with God is getting more and more personal.
Yes.
As you're going through those, as to if you didn't stay within your group and continue to study together, you would not have done that.
Thank you very much for adding that. And it was also very clever of you. Probably you're fearing that I'm not going to return to you ever.
I don't want to forget because that meant so much to
just
me.
joking, yeah. Tell us a little bit about your family moving to the States. When, what age for you, what memories do you have, and how it was to
be here.
find yourself in a new world?
Yes. So my mom and dad decided to come. At the time, one said, let me go and spend a year or so or two, then we'll come. And they finally spoke among each other, and they saw that for their life together, it was best that the two of them came together. I was 10 years old at the time. And so they didn't come with us. We stayed behind, but they made sure we stayed with an Adventist family, because on my mom's side, where there was grandma, aunties, and people that we could live with, while our parents immigrated, they were not Adventist, they were Baptist. So there was two members in my mom's family that were Adventist, but they were not the authority figure in the family. So although they were Adventist, our parents didn't feel at the time they could really continue to influence us. So they left us with very close family friends at the time for the first year. And then we were on the north side of the country, and my mom's family was on the west side of the country. And it was like a 6-hour travel to come visit us, to check on us when we were little. And my grandma put a protest and said, you know, the kids have to be with us. We promise we'll take them to church. We'll make sure. And so the following year that our parents were in the U.S. and were still in Haiti, we moved with grandma and our aunt. However, as promised, we went to a Seventh Adventist school, and we also attended church regularly, and our Pathfinders and our youth activities and camp and everything, as if we were living with our parents. Now, worship every day wasn't the same as when we were home, but the rest of the routine was about the same. So they delivered on that promise to our parents, and so we stayed there for 3 years.
3 years.
Then my
Was
dad,
it difficult for you? And you didn't have at the time
Mom and Dad.
Facebook and Skype and everything.
No.
Even phone calls probably were very, very
So
rare.
phone calls were weekly over the weekend.
Weekly,
The
yeah.
parents would call over the weekend, call the house, we'll talk to them, and they'll come visit 3 months. Every 3 months, one of them would come to Haiti and spend some time with us, mom or dad, because they would come every 6 months themselves. So one come the first 3, and then the other one comes. Their 6 months would be every 3 months. So every 3
visa
months,
related?
it was visa related. So they
Yeah.
have to come every 6 months. So they kind of did it in a way. So we saw one parent every 3 months, but we were so used to grandma and the aunts and uncles that we were with, that and there was other cousins our age, so it was a fun time. And our parents kept contact, so we didn't really have a chance to really miss them, and life wasn't hard, it was good at the time. But my father was very concerned about the quality of our Christian education, and he wanted it to be a little bit stronger, and he felt that it was not fair to us to be without our parents' guidance at the time, and he felt it was their duty to raise us during that time. It was such a sensitive time to shape our spiritual life, and he decided to go back. And he said he's going back, and at the time my mom felt she invested so many years already in coming here, and that she would stay behind and get her papers situated to become a permanent resident, and and still doing the back and forth, and Dad decided to go back. So 3 years later, after they left, Dad is back, and we moved back with Dad, and we're going around the country again as pastors and things like that. When he was in the U.S., he was still in ministry,
Really?
but but more of a lay pastor.
Yeah.
And he was in the Florida area and had churches and things like that. But he felt that he was missing his duty toward us, the children. So he went back, and we were with him until paperwork were done for the whole family to move here. And at the time, he was not interested in living in the U.S. anymore, so he was still doing the back and forth. He has retired, and I was 24, I think, 24 years old when I came to the U.S. to live
Really?
here, exactly.
So
And,
many years.
so
Just
many
like
years
you
passed.
lived, yeah.
It's a long time for all of these process. Mother has to finish that process, and then the process of becoming a citizen, then eventually get us
In the
over.
meantime, would you also travel to the United States? And
No,
spend,
so we did not travel to the U.S. Father was coming all the time. My dad was coming, but and Mom was coming back and forth. But us, we never applied for a visa because we were just in school. And at the time when we were going to do a school visa, because the plan was for us to go to Mexico to the University of Montemorelos to school. The American Embassy was closed in Haiti during that time because of political turmoil. And I was done with high school, so I stayed and went to the Seventh Adventist University. So, and my brother too, and so there was no talk of going abroad anymore to school. So we were just in school doing what we need to do. And I think we just continued life as if we were not going anywhere, but knowing in the back of your mind that you will probably need to leave sometimes. Yeah.
And finally it came. But what was the environment of your country when you were, in your early life? Because the country went through difficult times.
Quite changes.
I don't have a clear time frame. Was still a dictatorship? Was still
Yes.
Papa Doc or Papa? What was
Jean-Claude Duvalier. So
and
when I was born,
the father or the son?
the son.
The son.
So when I was growing up, the son was president. So the father had died, I think, in 1972. So, so when I was born, it was already the son. However, when I was about 10, 11, that's when the son left. And
So
they
that was a
reversed that.
turmoil.
That's when they had the turmoil around that time. And if you follow the politics in Haiti, from that point on, it was a lot of unrest, one after the other. A government would not last more than 2 to 3 years, and then there'll be a coup, and another one comes. So it was 10 years later, and they were still having coup after coup, and very unstable. And the insecurity at first was because of those unrest, but then crime started growing. And right now you have both. You have your political unrest, instability, and now you have crime rising as well, which made it not the same environment I was growing up with, because when I grew up, I was 10, 11, I could go to school by myself. Nobody would worry about letting me catch the bus, and I didn't have to have a driver drop me and pick me up because it was safe to do that. But now it's a little bit less safe to have a kid who looks as if the parents can provide on the street alone, because they may get, it may not be safe. So parents have to provide the transportation and make sure that they go and come back safely.
So when you were 22,
Yes.
yeah, 22, you,
24.
24, you came to the States.
Yes.
We'll return to that. In the meantime, you were pursuing an education. How did you decide to study law?
Interesting.
Excuse me, you said you have been to Europe just visiting, or you have also been in school in Europe?
In school.
In school, yeah.
Most of it was student exchange program.
Oh, I see.
Or the intentional desire to be able to utilize the system that I get to better my language skills.
Language means?
Well, I wanted to, although I grew up in a house where we spoke French and Creole, but my French was not up to par, and
I
my
see, so you
parents
went to France.
Yeah, my parents were
To have
into the education.
to have a
And
culture
right.
to French, not the common.
So the first one, so I went to the University of Avignon in France.
Historical place, very
Yeah.
historical
Yes,
place.
it
yeah.
was very nice. It was my first time out of the country, actually. And that was good. That was a summer-long program. I also studied at the University of Madrid, and then so I went to Madrid. That was another summer. I went to. Then I did Barcelona. That was during law school. There was a program where you're able to take some program. That was actually after law school when because I got a master's in transnational business after that. And that was very intense because you spend probably about 9 to 10 months. And I worked for a very good firm there, a law firm there. And this is prior to practicing here. It was like a long internship part of the program. And you live there as a professional, young professional. And I remember working on one of the accounts. It was a McDonald's account that was that was in Europe. Yeah, so those experiences they help. I had another program actually in Salzburg, Austria.
Really?
Yes.
So you speak French, you speak Creole, you speak English, you speak Spanish, you speak German?
Well, German, kind of, I did back then, I understood.
Ein bisschen?
Yeah, but I did speak, I speak Spanish fluently, French, Italian, I spoke very well for a
Really?
while. Yeah, but now it hasn't
Oh, I
been
didn't know anything about that.
I haven't practiced it anymore.
Then you
and
understand
Creole.
Romanian as well, if you speak Italian.
Well, with Romanian, it's interesting that I want to think that a lot of times I understand some things because you try to put the things together, but since I've never taken a Romanian class, I wonder how do you put everything together? I guess language are interconnected in a way.
Very
Latin.
much Spanish, Italian, Portuguese,
Latin.
Romanian, French, they are all Latin languages.
And I've always loved international flair things. You know, even as a child, I love reading these books where it takes you around the world, or there's an adventure somewhere else. You know, I always said, that too bad that there's not as much stability in the Middle East as there used to be. But I always thought, one day I'll be going through the Saharan desert somewhere,
Wow.
or going through some eastern portion or something like that,
Very adventurous.
Yes.
Very.
Yeah. So because I love reading. I mean, this was just one of those things that I could just do. I mean,
Once I flew over Sahara, and it will take you a few time to go through. It was about 3 hours flight over.
Absolutely.
Yeah, back when I was growing up, there was like sub-Sahara, Sahara, Nowadays, I don't think geography is something that we emphasize in the U.S. as much.
Well, you are an universe by yourself here. So the time you came, you were a young adult.
Yes.
Were you excited about coming? Were you
Very much.
afraid or both?
I was excited and afraid, and it became a frustrating experience at the beginning because I did not speak. So Haiti, we speak French and Creole. So when I came here, I fluently spoke French and Creole. But I did have a touch of English because my dad always wanted to make sure that we have a basic understanding. But when you're in a different country learning to speak a language,
I know.
the accent, you're not learning it the right way, so you're not really able
you think
to
you know,
sound
but
it.
when you land
And then
there,
you're like,
you feel like I think I learned a different language.
Exactly. You feel me. You know exactly, because I'm pretty sure.
That was my first experience with Spanish.
You went through similar experience, and so that was my experience. And when I came here, I was already a nurse, and so I studied nursing in Haiti at the Seven Adventist University, and practiced at the Seven Adventist hospitals as well, and a couple of 2 other hospitals in the city. But when I got here, I thought it was going to be easier to transfer my credits, and so it took a moment to get the paperwork between Haiti and here, get things translated, then apply to take the board of nursing here, and as well try to get the language
you
right.
had to do it in English, of
exactly,
course.
and for myself, study the language. I started taking classes right away because I understood, all the nice little books that I used to read in English when I was in Haiti were just easy reading, but speaking it is another story. And as you can see, I have a lot to say. So when I'm sitting somewhere and they were talking, they were having very interesting conversations, and all I could do was kind of listen. I could not say anything. I can't participate. It was a bit frustrating, but it doesn't stay there because you continue to grow and you continue to learn. Before you know it, you're part of the conversation. Before you know it, you're speaking the language and going to school. So in the process of trying to transition my credentials, I realized that the program that we had in Haiti for nursing was a diploma program, although it was a 3.5 years program. So I needed my bachelor's, and with this, I decided to go back to school. So I went to Adelphi University in New York. I was living in New York at the time, so I attended a university there, and I thought they were going to give me English classes in order to get into the program.
Like remedial English
Yes,
class,
exactly. So I met with the dean, and I explained to her my situation, and I told her that I wanted to get into the nursing program, and I know she's gonna want to give me some English classes first. I have no problem with that. I'll start. She's like, no. You're fine. You speak English. You've been speaking to me all of this time, and I understand what you're telling me. So I think you can go straight into your nursing courses. And that's how, when God is leading, He just leads in a very sure way. And I got into the program. Now, people who get into nursing program here in the U.S. will tell you what a struggle it is. But for some reason, I had a very easy path into the program. I just, from the registrar office to the dean's office to setting me up with an advisor to pick classes, and I started with the lower nursing courses already, nutrition and assessment, right away. I'm not sure if they were influenced with the fact that I already had a degree in nursing in Haiti, but as I said, I believe God was leading. And it was a straight 3 years. Within 3 years, I got this bachelor's done. As for the paperwork between Haiti for me to get my nursing exam here to get licensed as a foreign graduate nurse never happened, because I was graduating in May, and in April I received finally from the NCLEX department here in the US, finally we were able to complete all of your, they confirm your credentials, and you can now sit and take the board as a foreign graduate nurse. And I'm like, oh, no thank you, I just finished my bachelor's here, and I'm gonna take it as a US graduate nurse right now. And it was 3 years later. So going through the step and not being able to work as a nurse the way I was trained, and I was already practicing in Haiti, it had its own frustration. However, when I stepped into the workforce, I had the confidence of being trained here as well. So I was able to step in without a hesitation, because I already had, built a lot of confidence in working in Haiti as a nurse for 3 years or so, 3 years by the time I got here, and I was already teaching new nurses. I was really in a position where I acquired that kind of confidence, and now with the knowledge that I just got with studying here again, it was a good move. So I don't regret those years. They absolutely shaped my nursing career here and made it go in a pretty steady growth.
And I imagine before long you came to know each other.
Yes, I went to the church where he was a member when I came, and they, introduced us to the church. And when church was over on that Saturday, he came by to greet. Yes.
Someone looked at you and said, you would make the best looking pair. Why don't you befriend each other?
What are you thinking? He came by to greet us, with me and my younger brother. My older brother was here already, and he knew him. He was here a few months prior, about 9 months to a year prior to us coming. And So myself and my younger brother were there, and he came to be introduced to us as well that Saturday when they were introducing us to the church. So from this point on, he remained, you know, a figure, somebody I noticed. He's a very nice gentleman, always well dressed, exactly like that. Exactly like that.
So that's not your contribution.
No. In fact, when he's getting dressed to go somewhere and he said, honey, this one or this one, I said, you do great on your own. You don't need my opinion. I'll pick just to please
She's
him.
too kind.
But he is, he was always fine. I mean, you cannot not notice. Of course, I had to notice. I was like 24.
I'm learning a lot in this interview. You know?
So I did notice him.
Wonderful. And the rest
then we
is history,
continued
as they say.
to talk,
Yeah.
and then we had our first date.
Yeah.
Villard, let's move to your field now. Time is running up. So you work as a lawyer. For how long have you been working as a lawyer?
About 22 years now.
22 years
I know,
already.
I started,
Wow.
yeah. I worked, I started trying to decide whether I wanted to do business or law. I finally decided that I wanted to use my law degree, and I went to work for one of the firms that I actually used to do business with. And then it started that way. We mainly did contract work, and we defended the insurance companies and the insureds, and did some type of real estate there. And then I moved. I stayed in private practice, working for other people, and then I went into corporate law. I worked for a corporate, for the insurance companies, and in their corporate field, defending the insurance companies that they insured. Then I slowly progressed to doing a smaller law firm type of work, where more general practice, but mostly focusing on injuries. And that was back in New York. I practiced in New York for about 10 years. I'm bored there. And then we moved here. When I moved here, I received some opportunities from other attorneys that said, you know what, why don't you open up a practice and we'll help you and we'll do it together. And that's been 11 years now, 12 years.
So you got some help for that.
Yes, I got a lot of
wonderful.
help. I've got a lot of help.
Villard, you have worked for so many years, and you have a variety of, exposures and lots of experience as a Christian. In what ways is your Christianity, your faith, informing and influencing your practice, and in what ways your practice is illuminating or is, informing your Christianity?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because I'm so involved in the church.
Yes, you are
and
very
it's always
much.
it's always been a focal part of our lives. It naturally becomes a guiding principle in your work. I'm always amazed at people reminding me that there's something about you that's a little different. And this is not about bragging. This is just about the fact of life, which is good for us because a lot of times you might not be on the right path or thinking the right path, but others remind you, hey, you're serving as example. I mean, I've been in a situation where individuals have said, you know what, I don't think he would do it that way because he belongs to that church or something like this. And I say that because that it influences you almost all the time. Even judges at some point you don't realize would say, oh yeah, he's this is so and so, and they remind me of some ethical or some influential things of Christ that you didn't even know that you exuded to them.
Very interesting.
So how does it help you? I mean, especially being an attorney, a lot of times we run the gambit of the line because you're always balancing ethically what's appropriate and just unselfishly what's good. But then you're brought back. Hey, you've got a greater call. You're not just an attorney. You're not just you're a Christian. and you have to put that into your practice. My staff, they'll put the church or my values above everything else because they're like, oh, no, he's not going to do it this way, you know. And it's interesting, even though as a human, as a sinner, you don't think that you are at the level that you should be, but it comes back to you, and it defines you. And aside from the church, I participate in other non-profit and like voluntary things that would help society. And a lot of them have things in common, I see, with making yourself better, making others better, allowing life to be defined more than just making money. You know, I think if it was just for that, I think I would be. You would have the temptation to become a lot wealthier. I mean, the Lord has blessed me a lot, but you pause sometimes and say, you know what? Is this what the Lord wants me to do? Is this how I should be kind? Am I helping the person? So in that way.
Many times you work with defendants. You need to represent them. In what ways these kind of interactions help you to better understand human mind, human character, and the work of the Spirit on the human heart?
Yeah, you know that I think almost every attorney should probably do some part of criminal law. And the reason I say that is because it brings you back to reality. You see how low as humans we could be, how Satan is using us. Because a lot of times, and those people are not necessarily the worst people in the world. It's just that there's one point in their life where they're falling. And all of us could fall into that at one point. The trick is not to think of ourselves as better than they are. And it's hard to do. And also to remind them, okay, listen, I'm not here to be like all the other lawyers or what you think on TV. If we're gonna win, we're gonna do it in a certain way so that we're still in line with it. And you'll be surprised. The same person that is asking you to do all this bad things will at the end respect you.
Really? I was going to ask you if sometimes some of your clients are not frustrated with you because you don't agree to do all the tricks, you know, but you say in the end they come to respect you.
Yeah, a lot of times what happens, first of all, because your faith, sometimes they would see your faith come through for them. But the other thing is, as much as they're pushing, they push you, at the end of the day, I don't have one that I could think right now as far as that had asked you to push something that says, oh, you know, I regret that he didn't do it. Maybe they didn't tell me, but because at the end of the day, they want to trust you. They rather that you straightforward with them, because if they don't trust each other, it's kind of like one of their colleagues.
Sure.
You know?
Absolutely.
My practice is a little different also. I try, and I'm still trying. My practice is more, okay, you're the person that you come back to. I get to know him because somebody else knows. So my reputation and my trust is what gets me clients more so than anything else.
Have you seen in some of your clients, you had to represent them and maybe they are, you know, suspected of serious misdemeanor or crimes, or have you been able to see in them a transformation?
The youngsters.
You know, toward the good, I mean, a mellowing of their heart and things like that.
Especially, like I said, especially the younger ones.
The younger.
You have the really, really, really young ones in the criminal, really, really young. I'm talking 12, 13 that come from really bad environments. Those are very challenging. But when you get to the college age, a lot of them sometimes Christian, family brought up ones. When they come over first of all, they see someone that they can identify with their parents or with their people at church that actually advocating for them. But then a lot of them have changed, because for those younger ones, I look to have something to teach them more so than just a punishment for punishment. If I could work out some type of agreement with them. And yeah, I've seen a couple of them change. Some of them I became mentor to. They would call you for
After
that. And those are the greatest. Not all of them. You wish for them.
Yeah, but you didn't have time for all of them.
Right. And sometimes you become mentor to the parents.
Really?
It's interesting, you know. So that, in that sense, it's rewarding. That's rewarding.
Last question, and I'm sorry I have to leave untouched many other interesting things, but Jesus is presented as our defender, our advocate.
Okay.
Your work as a lawyer and as a defender, does it help you to better understand the mission of Christ and to make you feel more your deep need of having Him to defend you?
Oh, definitely. It helps personally, on your personal level, because of what I do. I learn to appreciate what God is doing every day and has done for me. Because sometimes there's a little stuff that you don't see. Because you look to other people that I defend, and I say, why isn't that me? That could have been me. Because it's not always, people have this idea that it's always people come from bad families. Sometimes it's just a friendly mistake. Sometimes it's being at the wrong place at the right time. Sometimes it's not being able to prove your point, even though you're innocent. But the facts are so much against you, and you've put yourself in such bad company, in such a bad situation, that it's unfathomable for anybody to really. And that person is, sometimes it's something as simple as reporting requirements that all of us need to do, and we just didn't do it. And that sends you somewhere else, and that changes your life forever. So why isn't that me? So it humbles you, and it makes you realize, man, my defender, the Lord really looks out for me. And I better actually depend on Him all the time. I appreciate Him a lot more.
Do you ever weep when seeing, the lives which could have been fantastic in tatters?
Yeah. Sometimes it's even personal. Sometimes you see people that are closer to you because you understand it. And you go, oh boy, it just hurts. Because a lot of times that life is never going to change back, at least in this world.
Do you sometimes feel that he has a burden? He is deeply saddened, and when he comes home, is he able to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and at times when he have a very hard trial, then he'll have difficulty sleeping. He'll get up and take a shower at 4 a.m. and come to bed late because he's trying to find the right way, or he's very concerned about the person, the individual per se, or he might have done a great work with that person and got them out of something, and then he received a phone call. It's like, this person is in trouble again, and he feels it, and you could see, and by the way, this is business coming to him, right? This person is calling again, and they're gonna have to hire his help again, but he's not excited about this money. He really would have rather see this person stay out of trouble in situation like that. So he really, the criminal cases are very heavy on his heart normally. So these are not the one I encourage him to. To do a lot of.
Thank you very much. Our conversation had,
Awesome.
Thank you.
Mary and both Mary and happy aspects, but also very sobering and
Sure.
Thank you very much, and may God continue to keep you strong and helping people to appreciate the great gift of salvation in Christ. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate what you do now in the community.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Even more.